Hi, and welcome to Filmmakers Compass Podcast, a show where we talk about movies and, well, more movies. I'm D-Man, joined by CP. CP, how are you doing today?
Much better than last time, D-Man. I'm super excited that we're back here podcasting. Mostly, I don't
I
want to
don't.
get called out for my lack of enthusiasm.
I was going to say, I don't know if everybody could actually see that, and if you're listening, I'll go ahead and explain it. When I said CP, he threw up the finger guns this week,
Boo, boo,
which,
boo, boo.
yeah, that really got me excited. So thank you for bringing that enthusiasm. That is incredible. Now, while we are talking about CP, I just wanted to ask you, because I cannot see it clearly, and for those listening, they cannot see it at all. What is on your t-shirt?
I don't know. It's like modern art. I got it from an Adobe conference, you
Is
know?
that what is it? Adobe Connect? Is that what it is?
Yeah, at like you know how they do their event every year? Well,
Yeah,
when
it's
you
Los
go,
Angeles, right?
yeah, Adobe gives you shirts, and this is it. And it's like a toucan and like a flower and a house. I don't know.
I suspect maybe created in Photoshop.
I mean, I don't think you get on an Adobe shirt unless you create something in Photoshop.
Let me just say, I hope Adobe didn't use Canva. So
Burn.
let's go ahead and jump into our shout outs this week, CP. So first up is Drucker at Eric Drucker 1, who said that he is very excited to see Dune Part 2 in theaters,
And you
which,
should be, Drucker.
yeah,
You really should be.
I want to get your opinion on that, CP. The trailer and the first poster for Dune Part 2 dropped this week, and it was pretty exciting. It looks like a great continuation, and I know you are a huge fan of the first one. So what were your thoughts?
I was very excited to see it. It looks exactly what we're expecting to get in Dune Part 2. And that trailer was pretty exciting in its own right. I remember watching it. I was like, yes, I'm totally pumped to see this.
And it looks like it has quite a stellar cast. There's a real lineup there. I mean, there's the characters returning from part one, but they're adding like Florence Pugh. Uh,
Austin
what's the name?
Butler.
Yeah, I was gonna say what's the guy's name who played Elvis, Austin Butler. And then they already have like Timothy Chalamet or however you say his last name,
And
Zendaya.
Zendaya,
I don't know how to say
Rebecca
her name.
Ferguson, Javier Bardone, Josh Brolin. Like it's a pretty killer.
Dave
Dave
Bautista.
Bautista. Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, so that's pretty exciting. And I know, if you just want to give your take on it, you really did feel that Dune was a theater experience worthy of the big screen. And we can actually, link you guys or connect in a post later to our episode where we actually did movie remake time for Dune. But just for anybody that has a chance to check out the trailer today, you would recommend seeing it in theaters, as Drucker said.
Oh, totally. I think watching it on just the screen in your home, you're missing out on so much of the experience. You know, Villanueva does so much. He puts so much detail into every single shot. The visual effects are stellar. You know, they do so much with the use of sound and music that I think you're just robbing yourself of the experience by watching it in your living room.
Now, I don't know if you have the answer to this question, but if I recall correctly, when they released Doom Part 1, this is when HBO Max was doing their COVID strategy and releasing all their movies simultaneously on HBO Max, which is now just Max. But they are no longer doing that, correct? So in order to see it when it drops, you would need to go to the theaters for Dune Part 2.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Okay. I know that that strategy was not well liked at all by any of the filmmakers or the production participants. Obviously, I don't think the movies fared as well. There was obviously a detriment to the box office. And even though the viewing numbers were probably good on Max, it's why Scarlett Johansson got in that fight with Disney back in the, COVID years, because there wasn't any revenue sharing at that time with the streamers. So it was a whole mess. So I
Yeah,
believe it's going straight to theaters, and that's how you have to experience it, but it's probably how you should experience it.
I totally
So
agree.
I have to give a shout out to my mom and my sister who are coming out to visit in a little
Yay.
under 2 weeks, which is very exciting. I haven't seen them in quite a while. Trips home and trips out here have been a little sparse during the kind of COVID years, which it's exciting that they're coming out here for a wedding. But I am giving them a shout out because maybe, CP, we can entice them to maybe grab a quick interview or a piece of content and get them on the show.
Oh,
So
dude, that would be
that would
cool.
That would be pretty cool. And it's actually going to be fun because I believe, we're trying to all meet up and have lunch. So that'd
It's
be
gonna
great.
be fun. And your mom's been around since we our early forays into filmmaking, so she's probably got a thing or two to say about it.
Right? I think that would be fun. So we'll see if we can make that happen. I wanted to give a shout out to my cousin, Daniel Vallejo, and Alec Gaston, who actually, the way I phrase that is not my cousin,
I was
but
gonna say
really,
Alec Gaston is your cousin because I always considered him my brother, but hey, whatever.
yeah, I guess Alex, you're my brother. So they have both supported this podcast in the past, and I wanted to give them a shout out because each of them just dropped new music singles this week, which I believe they've both written music and provided vocals for short films and movies and different things. So if you get a chance, go check out their new songs. I've listened to both. I watched both videos and I thought they were fantastic. So you can follow my cousin Daniel at D Vallejo 22, and Vallejo is Vallejo. And you can follow Alec Gaston at Alec Gaston. So thank you guys. And CP, now we get to my most exciting shout out this week. Happy May the 4th be with you. It was
Yes.
officially Star Wars Day. And I just have to give a shout out to all the people who messaged me. I wanted to say thank you, but a couple specifically: Connor, Joe Rubio, my cousin Bob, and anybody else. I always love,
Leo.
yeah, I love getting Star Wars content, and there was a bunch of stuff that popped up all over my feed really across social media. But Star Wars Day is so much fun, and I don't know if you did anything specific to celebrate CP, but at midnight
Oh,
on Star Wars Day, I put on the original Star Wars, and I stayed up till about 2 a.m. and just thoroughly enjoyed myself in bed. It was amazing.
that sounds like a great Star Wars Day tradition. I did not get up at midnight and watch an episode, a Star Wars movie. However, I did end up watching Revenge of the Sith later in the day.
Nice. Yeah,
Got
that
to
movie's
watch
bomb.
something Star Wars on May 4th. Come on.
Yeah. And the thing is, man, I put on the original Star Wars, and I'll tell you what, it is my all-time favorite movie. It's perfect. Like, I don't even know what else to say. Like, as I was watching it, it transports me nostalgically back to being a kid. But at the same time, it's not a nostalgic movie. It's not tapping into that inherently because I didn't grow up on the, Saturday morning serials and old school films that George Lucas based this on. So really, to me, it's just such a great, fun adventure movie. I love all of the characters, and it was the best. I just love it.
Dope. I love it.
So I want to give a shout out on that note while we're talking about Star Wars to my friend at Jedi Dude J. That's Jeremy Sangley, who he makes movie accurate Star Wars costumes all the time. He's got ranging from stormtroopers to the Mandalorian to Jedi Knights and all kinds of things. And he actually does this, I believe, partially as a business. He works for a company that builds parts for the costumes as well as develops them himself. He's the person who, shout out, made our lightsabers for Steph and I's wedding,
Dope.
uh, which is really cool. So, and he's always posting photos and videos and all that stuff about the process and his new costumes to his Instagram. And you can usually catch him at Comic-Con every year, but I just wanted to give him a shout out because he messaged me. It was Star Wars Day, so we just connected. And he's a huge Star Wars fan. Dare I say, maybe a bigger fan than I am. So,
What?
which
I
is
don't I don't think I believe that.
that it's pretty crazy. But if there's anybody, it's probably this guy. So he's even in the 501st Legion. So I think he's in on a couple costumes actually. So he
Pretty
gets to,
sweet.
yeah, he gets to rock the costumes in an official capacity, which is pretty dope. Because I remember even working conferences or Star Wars Celebration, not working them, but I remember going to them, and the 501st Legion would work them. They would provide security and stormtrooper costumes and do different things. It's really fun. So, and then they do all kinds of like great things like Make a Wish and Big Brothers and all that type of stuff too. So it's actually really cool. But Jeremy, I think you're doing good stuff, man, and hopefully we'll be able to connect soon. That'd be great. So, and then CP, like I said, there was a bunch of content in my feed, so I don't know if you got a chance to see this, but there was all kinds of cool Star Wars celebrations going on at like Disneyland and Disney World.
Yep.
And I think they call it like Star Wars After Dark or Disneyland After Dark. And they let people go into Black Spire Outpost, I think is the name of the Star Wars land at Disneyland.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody can bring lightsabers and they bring in a DJ and they kind of have like a big party. It's pretty cool. And it looks like just a ton of fun. So I do not have Disneyland passes and have never been to anything like that, but I was living vicariously through social media, and it
I
was
feel
pretty
like
entertaining.
that is something you have to do, D-Man.
I know. I mean, I'm literally the guy, in high school, I used to dress up as a Jedi when I would go to the Star Wars prequel premieres. And, I literally had a Star Wars wedding and all of these things. So, yeah, I mean, feels like I should make it there eventually,
Yeah, right.
add that to the bucket list. Now, CP, I'm going to throw it over to you. Did you have any shout outs on this episode?
Shout out to our friend and listener Selena. It is in fact, or was in fact, her birthday. So happy birthday,
Oh,
Selena.
happy birthday, Selena. That's awesome. Hope you had a fantastic birthday. So, anything else, or are we good to
No,
go?
I think we're good to go. Let's get into this episode. We got a lot to talk about.
Yeah. So, first up, I think the big thing that is making news, making headlines right now is the writer's strike. So, we have acknowledged this on previous podcast episodes, but kind of declined talking about it until there was some more definitive news to report. And officially on May 2nd, the writer's strike went into effect. So, writers are striking, WGA writers at least. And I believe, pretty much most Hollywood writers, if you even have aspirations to ever join the WGA.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So they're on strike. And one of the things that I want to talk about is, just for our listeners, how did we get here? What is this actually about? What's going on with the writer's strike? Because the last time there was a writer's strike was around 15 years ago, 2007, 2008, that lasted about 100 days.
100 days. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a pretty long strike for anything in Hollywood. And there was a lot of productions affected in different things. But between that time and now, what exactly is, the stick in the mud here? What's the thing that's holding up a new contract? And when you take a look at it, it really comes down to two things, and that's streaming and the revenue split, which makes sense.
Yep.
Obviously, whoever, when new platforms, new things come about, there's going to be a power struggle over the percentages and who gets what. And obviously, the people who created them generally come out of the gate first with more, so they have negotiating leverage, and that's where we are. So that actually makes a lot of sense. But the other thing that is kind of big, and I didn't even know about this, so maybe you can speak on a little bit if you know what I'm talking about. Apparently, production companies, particularly at streaming services, introduced something called mini writers rooms, which is essentially a writer's session or sessions where writers get together and they outline and structure the entire season of a show for a streaming service. But what's interesting about these mini rooms is they are not paying normal writers' rates for the writers in the room. They're paying minimum rates because they're calling them mini rooms.
Yeah.
So, which again, fair or not, I don't know anything about that. Have you heard of that?
I have heard of it, and it's honestly just as idiotic as it sounds. It's the same thing as a writer's room, right? Instead of, it's more, my understanding is the mini rooms focus more on kind of like macro story as opposed to the episodic kind of episode by episode that most writers rooms are focusing on. But the idea is you call it something different, and under that new heading, you're not tied into the contractual obligations that you do if it was a regular writer's room.
Yeah.
And it's just a way to, save.
It's just calling something different. Yeah, it's just calling something different.
It's
so
like
that
when
you
the
can
government,
charge
instead
differently.
of they implement a fee on something, so they don't quote unquote have to go through the loopholes of implementing a tax. It's the same thing.
Yeah, and I have to agree with the writers here. I mean, I feel like there is, when you tie the mini rooms to streaming, there is an interesting dynamic, which is the streamers are saying that seasons for streaming services tend to be shorter. They tend to range from 8 to 12 episodes, where traditionally television series episodes ranged from usually I think it was 15 to 24 episodes. So in the past on broadcast. So there was a lot more work. So and the times for those episode lengths, you have sitcoms at 22 minutes, and then you have usually, like 51 minutes or hour long shows or, whatever it is, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
But you have roughly 24 episodes to a season, and then the streaming services aren't making as many episodes per season for the shows that are being developed for those platforms. So on one hand, I get where the streamers are saying like, hey, listen, like we're not making the shows as long, so we don't want to pay you as much. But the writers are saying like, well, we need more stable work because that means now the writers where you if you used to work on a show, I mean, you had like guaranteed work for like 6 to 8 months out of the year. And then you would just take other jobs. And then more than likely, if you're doing a great job, you'd be brought back for the next season, assuming the show's success. But now, you might only work for 3 to 4 months and you have to find other work. And the problem with finding other work for writers is that sometimes if you have to take work on another job, that could interfere with your current job.
Yeah.
So it causes instability. And when the pay is going down, so you're getting paid less for those 3 to 4 months than you would have been working a broadcast job, and you have more job instability. I 100% get where the writers are coming from. And I get wanting a larger piece of the pie of the streaming services, because obviously and we're going to get into the CP, the success of streaming services, that's where things are going. So kind of doesn't matter. Like that's where it's headed, is streaming, and fair or not, however successful they are or not, whatever. That's how we're going to consume our content. So I understand also wanting to negotiate, using the leverage you have at this time to make sure that you're getting paid fairly as you go forward, which I don't know. That makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So who actually is on strike? And this is interesting because it is the Writers Guild of America and writers, and there are other people in different professions that are also kind of joining in on the picket line, supporting writers, but officially none of the other guilds have gone on strike. That's my understanding.
Yeah. There is apparently I heard that there's rumors that the DGA may go on strike too over the revenue split as well, which would be wild because even though technically writers on strike, production can still continue for things that have already, the scripts have already been finalized and submitted. So that would be a major shutdown if the DGA went on strike as well. But as of now, it's just the writers. And remember, there are two writers guilds. There's the Writers Guild East, which is on the East Coast, and the Writers Guild West, which is, as the name suggests, on the West Coast.
Yeah, well, so while they're on strike, what exactly does this affect? So it's a long list, obviously, if depending on the length of the strike, this could go all the way to affecting theatrical releases, streaming services, broadcast television, late night shows, award shows, all kinds of things, right? Mm-hmm. But, we're only, maybe less than a week into this strike, probably at the release of this episode. And CP, hopefully, if this episode comes out, we're not too far behind all the latest news. But, what does this affect right now? Like, what are we looking at as viewers? What can I expect, my viewing schedule? Like, what about it can change?
Well, I think it's tough to say. And that's only because it really depends on how long this strike goes. As of now, things are probably good. If the production companies and streamers come to their senses and cut a deal in 2 weeks, then there's not going to be a major impact. However, if it goes close to the length of a month, we're already going to look at seeing an impact on if there's anything that you watch on broadcast television. Mm-hmm. Late night shows have already announced that they're going on hiatus until the strike is over, because all the writers that write the jokes aren't going to be working.
So that's like Fallon, Kimmel, Colbert, Daily Show. Does that include SNL? I think it does.
Yes.
Yeah, SNL.
What else? The shows that if you watch any series, like serial productions on network television, on broadcast television, like The Rookie, ER, right? These type of shows, very well, depending on where they are in their production schedule, you might run into a couple weeks off where there is no episode because they're not at the point that they can release something new.
And with the streaming platforms, what's interesting is obviously they do have some stuff in the pipeline. So depending on, like you said, the length of the strike, they can probably, wither this for a certain amount of time. Although I don't know if that's like officially been announced by any of them, like, oh, hey, we'll run out of content by. But the other thing they can do is they can like license or go acquire content from foreign markets, which is interesting, and kind of package that as some new releases. So it might be interesting if the writer's strike goes on for a while. we might see some shows coming from international and foreign markets, some new movies, and you might be watching some stuff with subtitles. Who knows?
You could be. The other thing too is, and I think this is very likely on the streamer front, this is a great opportunity for them to really dive deep in their archives and see what else they can pull out. Right? We might see
Yeah,
Disney Plus release some old ABC television series that are not currently on Disney Plus. We might
that's a
see
good point.
Amazon Prime dig up some old MGM content that they've had that hasn't been out, but they need something to keep populating the streamer with new content.
Yeah, that makes sense. So anyway, if we take a look back at the strike from 15 years ago, I was going to ask you, what do you remember? Like, what shows were you watching that either got shortened, canceled, just completely delayed? Like, what were the things, from 2007, 2008 that really stand out to you?
Oh man, it was crazy because if you remember where it kind of happened, unlike this strike, which is it seems like most shows in the traditional television model are kind of coming to a close anyway.
Mm-hmm.
That one happened November through February. So it was kind
Okay.
of in the middle of production of everything anyway. So some shows just sort of disappeared and went on extended hiatus. Other ones kind of forced makeshift endings that were not as good. I think a couple of the shows that I really remember suffer is I think a lot of people contribute the writer's strike to pretty much killing the show Heroes. That was a big
Okay.
one that I remember. Another one that I know suffered a lot was did you watch the show Prison Break?
I didn't watch Prison Break, but I do remember the show 24 with Jack Bauer being interrupted.
Yeah.
Like, I think they released a season, but it wasn't like it didn't feel like an official.
Well, because some of these at this point in time, right, this is a very traditional television model. We're expecting 22 episode seasons, and some of these shows are coming out with 13 episode seasons. And there were a couple ones that tried to, weather it as the best way they could. I remember the show Rescue Me pretty much just went on like a year-long break in response to it. And instead of releasing just the fifth season, it was kind of a fifth and sixth season combined into one super long season of the show. Another one that I thought was I used to watch the show Battlestar Galactica when it aired, and there was this major break in the middle of it, and it was kind of just like, hey, we're just gonna pick up whenever this comes back because this story is so dependent on our writers, and we understand that.
Which is fair. So it sounds like one of the interesting things that I'm, just going through a list of shows here is I didn't see in that 100 days from 0708 a big effect on movies. There's a lot of television.
Well, and think
So
about it. It's probably I mean, obviously television is much more dependent on regularly scheduled content being created by writers. Most of the movies that are coming out now were shot,
developed.
edited,
Yeah.
all the pre-production development writing happened 2 years ago. So there is kind of a backlog on the release of feature films that doesn't translate to television where, some shows are 2 weeks, some shows are, a month, but there's not that much of a gap between the development and the release and post-production.
Well, I did hear with this strike, the one going on right now in 2023, that when they took that preliminary vote about whether or not to strike, they had like 98% of all members voted to strike, which I believe was historic in the overwhelming number of people that voted to strike. And I have heard estimates that this strike could go on as long as 150 days, which I believe would set the record for the longest strike. And that is an estimate because of how at odds they are over the contract still. It doesn't sound like they're very close at negotiating positions that, oh, we just need to, bump this up or lower this. It does sound like there's still a lot of work to be done about how all this will pan out in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually, CP, takes me into our kind of second topic this week, which, while we're talking about streaming, I wanted to bring up something else that happened, and that is Paramount missed earnings projections by around $511 million, and their stock plummeted like 28%.
Wow. Jeez.
Now, this has a lot to do with Paramount Plus, which is doing fine as far as, overwhelming or overall streaming numbers. I think they have like 20 something plus million subscribers. They added like 4 million in the quarter, even though projections were down and the stock plummeted. But what's interesting to me about this conversation, when especially what the writers are looking to get in their strike, as well as now Paramount Plus missing earnings, we've talked multiple times about Netflix locking down password sharing and doing different things on this show. Why is streaming having trouble being profitable? Because it seems like a surefire business model, right? Like Netflix has, I don't know, 100 million subscribers, like a lot, all paying $7 a month. And you're telling me they can't take all of that incoming subscription revenue and make it profitable? That's insanity.
Man, the streaming thing I don't understand. Obviously, there's a lot of costs on the back end of streamers that we don't think about.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
There's massive amounts of server space. These things never go offline.
Yeah,
so
they're never
redundancy dark. is incredible. Not
24-hour uptime.
Yeah, and now we're expecting them to stream in 4K. That's just a lot of data. That's a lot of technical management. And so the costs behind that are incredible. But the other problem I think that we're witnessing is I think that in the name of the streaming wars which have now pretty much ended, but while we were going through it, I think sacrifices were made. And those sacrifices we saw a number of streamers like Disney Plus offering bundles where they were significantly below market value to entice new viewers and new subscribers, so they're already cutting costs to make this thing grow and build their viewership.
So it's all about user acquisition at this point. It's like, hey, let's see if we can cover our costs, but can we get enough people, with their credit card hooked up to Disney Plus so that when we raise prices, they're already hooked.
Yes. But the other major difference is this. Look at traditional broadcast television and look at streaming. Broadcast television traditionally, and obviously there were shows that were the exception to the rule, but traditionally it was built around a very affordable and sustainable model of television series, right? Sitcoms, procedurals, things where the actual costs of executing the show were very understandable, right? You could budget it out very well and say, okay, we need X amount of sets. We can get through this many episodes of show. This is the cost. I think, unfortunately, in the name of streaming, and we can only blame Netflix for this, the idea was the concept behind streaming is we can give you something different. We can give you something new. We can give you something that doesn't fit the mold of regular television. So they started creating shows of a much higher production value.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Implementing those cinematic techniques. And because of that, the costs of shows made on streaming are more expensive. And and then someone like Apple comes around, and when Apple decided to jump into the streaming game, Apple's approach was pretty much find the best people out there, pay them 25% above market value, so we can get the very best of everyone working on our content. So we've just seen this massive inflation of the costs of content production, which coupled with the, undercutting the value and the cost of accessing the channel, I think streamers really set themselves up for failure there.
Yeah, it's interesting just looking forward because, I know they've all had trouble with their earnings calls because they're just not, I guess, turning a profit for shareholders at the moment. And there is a chance that, down the road, they can either bring costs down, whether, like you said, it's production costs, acquisition costs, technology costs, right? There could be advancements in tech, different things to eventually make this, a more profitable venture. But it seems like in the name of growth, they've just absolutely created a monster here that's transformed how everybody consumes content and raised the bar, like you said, for the level of content, what we expect from our shows. And so there's no kind of going back. It's out of the box, right?
Yeah.
And it's now, how do we, kind of transform this to be more profitable? And like you said, it's interesting because we have seen price hikes, which is fair. Streaming services have been around for more than a decade now. So especially with Netflix, like I can't expect them to keep their streaming price at the exact same price. But, streamers have raised prices over time. And where will they be able to kind of turn that profit? It'll be, I don't know what an actual number is right now, meaning like if they all raise their prices to $22 a month, that would mean they'd be profitable. I don't know. I don't know if there is a number. I'm sure they know it, but they're never going to share it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting because when you look at the writers, they're on strike trying to get a larger piece of this pie that is essentially adding to the production costs for these streaming services. And it's one of those things where I can see where, if you're one of those companies, on the other side of the picket line, you're a streamer, you're trying to figure out like we also got to figure out how to make this. This isn't like, a windfall over here and we're just like raking in record profits. They're like, sure, we make a lot of money, but revenue is sometimes in the red. We're
Well,
not always.
yeah. And I think going forward, essentially the conversation is going to have to be, aside from the costs of streaming, if we are now expected to give away a portion of those earnings, now a greater portion, to writers, directors, all the other people involved, something has to change. So streamers are going to have to choose between high quality content, but you're going to have to offer less, or you're going to have to lean into the Walmart volume model with lower quality content. And, the lower quality content may be, we see streaming channels adopting more of the Hallmark business model, which is, hey, we run productions with really tight budgets. They're sort of formulaic, but the point is we crank out a lot of content.
Interesting.
Or
Yeah.
we may have something go more the AMC television model, which is, no, we don't offer a lot of shows, but what we do is really high quality across
Yeah.
the
Like
board.
HBO.
Right? Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's one of the two. And I don't think that there's a lot of room for the middle. The only way that you kind of achieve that middle ground, and we already saw it and it sort of failed, and that was the initial concept behind Netflix or Hulu, which is, hey, let's have one streaming service where we all just license them our content. We don't have to worry about the cost of operating a streaming service. We make
Yeah.
content, they pay us for it, we put it there, great. So we may see, maybe some of these streamers like Paramount Plus will end up bundling, or maybe Paramount Plus is going to cut a deal to exclusively license their content to Peacock or HBO or Netflix. But I don't
Sure.
know.
And
There's not a lot of
there,
options for them.
there is also, the world in which, like you mentioned, Apple TV, Amazon Prime. There is a world in which streamers may not ever actually need to like turn a profit, where if they're bought up by tech companies, they may just be a bundled service that tech companies include with their products and their product lineups. The way Amazon does with Prime or Apple does with Apple TV Plus on all of its devices. Sure, they don't give it away for free to all their device users, but in essence, it doesn't really need to turn a profit. It's just something that brings people into the Apple ecosystem.
Very
You know
true.
what I mean? So that could be an alternative down the road if the streamers aren't able to figure out how to turn this into massive profits.
Now, I see two other things that may happen.
Okay.
One, we could totally, truly see the bargain bin model, which is, and I think Prime kind of had this for a while. They've sort of phased it out in favor of more quality content, but we could see streamers really lowering the threshold of entry,
Okay.
creating more opportunity for foreign cinema, independent cinema, things like that to get their content on a streamer in the name of volume, right?
Okay.
Again, we're throwing the quality threshold out the window. We'll take anything and everything. We're going to pay out less, but the exchange is for everybody. We put any and all content out here. That was kind of what
Okay.
Prime's initial business model was. Anyone could get their independent film on Prime. They phased it out. They could go back to something like that if, we see a real struggle to increase feasibility. But the bigger thing is this. So there have been, this is now what, the sixth writer strike, I think.
Yeah, it might be. Yeah.
1960, 73, 81, 85, and 88.
Okay.
So when we look at the 2007 strike, it was truly about DVDs, right? And
Oh
the
yeah,
revenue
that's a good
split
point. Yeah.
off of DVDs, which is kind of interesting in the sense that I think that in many ways that was the driving force behind studios pushing streaming content, right? They're
Sure.
like, we
Yeah, I
can
get
get
that.
off paying out the royalties for DVDs if we have streaming content. But doing a little bit of research, the 1988 writer's strike pioneered something called reality television when Fox, in because they couldn't produce traditional content, created a show that required no writers. And do you know what this show was?
I don't.
You and I used to watch it all the time in college. Cops.
Oh, okay. Which is Cops isn't on the air anymore, is it?
I think it ended like 5 years ago, but it had like a 25-year run. But the point is,
Yeah, it's
we
pretty
could
epic.
see something new come out of this, which we don't know what it is, but this might be a great opportunity for something totally new to emerge from the world of content creation that is consumers we love. It lowers the costs of production and is totally viable and feasible on streaming. I don't know what that looks like. Again, part of studios' responses to the 2007-2008 strike was, let's just increase the number of reality TV we're doing in general
Fair enough. Yeah, I get
because we
that.
don't have to deal with writers.
Yeah.
So this could very much push the industry in a new direction that's just totally unforeseen at this point.
That's a good point too. Is sometimes when these conflicts arise, yeah, new things emerge and they're solutions or temporary solutions to problems that, just weren't around a year
Mm-hmm.
ago.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. And, I am, very empathetic, sympathetic to the writers. They should be getting, what they believe is a fair wage.
Mm-hmm.
And for the streamers, especially when your writers going up against some of these big tech companies, Apple, Prime, the money's there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
They know it. So I think at the end of the day, it's just, what they're really negotiating on is kind of the future of streaming here. How are we all going to do this together? Like, how is this going to work? And until a lot of those issues get kind of shaked out and they're able to find that solution, who knows how long this strike will go on. So
Yeah.
hopefully not
Yeah.
too long, because I know eventually, right, it starts with the writers, but when you go on strike, if these shows shut down, it affects a lot more than just the writers. There's a lot of people on the, production side, actors, directors, everything, that will lose work inevitably if this drags on.
Well,
So
and again, I think the big thing is, let's keep a very close eye to other forms of content that are emerging. During the 2007-2008 strike, again, when we look back on that, major television series started pioneering this concept of webisodes.
mm,
Rescue Me did it. Um, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia did it, and Battlestar Galactica did it. And they could all get away with it because of the fact that at the time, webisode content was not within any WGA agreement. So they could bring some writers back, they could pay them and say, okay, this is a new type of content we're pioneering. Write a couple episodes so we can put something out weekly for our fans so they know that we still care about them and don't totally forget about this show.
yeah.
So I guess I think the big thing that we need to be looking for at this time is what is coming out. Because there are producers out there that are money hungry and innovative and are thinking, how can we bend the
Yeah.
rules and work outside of the framework that's in place to get content out and continue giving our fans something that they want? And so that's really what I think we should be looking at here, aside from, the negotiations and what terms the writers come to with the streamers.
So, to our listeners, while we wrap up this conversation, just want to throw it out to you guys, and not to necessarily just get everybody's opinion on the writer's strike, but I am curious what you remember from the previous writer's strike in 07-08, and also if you notice anything that you have been affected by going forward. We are interested in hearing those stories. And of course, if you have any thoughts, feel free to share them. We love to discuss all that. So, CP, before we actually wrap up our episode this week, I did want to talk to you a little bit about movies that are coming out right now. So
Ooh,
are
okay.
you planning on going to the theater at all? Because we have Guardians of the Galaxy. I think there's Fast 10. There's at the end of the month, there's going to be Indiana Jones. I mean, are you going to be putting your AMC pass to work, your movie pass?
I bought my pass for Fast 10, I think back in like January, my ticket. So I will be there.
Okay.
Obviously, The Flash is coming out in June. I'm excited about that.
It looks great.
And I would rather go get a colonoscopy than go watch Guardians of the Galaxy 3. So that one's not going to happen for me.
Oh, you don't think Guardians 3 looks good? I think it looks great.
Well, you'll have to tell me all about it, D man.
All right, I will. I'll definitely. I'm gonna go see Guardians. I really love the first one. I know you're not a fan. The second one was pretty good, but I loved the Guardians appearances in the Avengers film. Was not a fan of how they showed up in Thor: Love and Thunder, but I'm hoping they can, kind of send them out with a bang because it sounds like this is the last kind of uh iteration of this group of the Guardians. So I haven't seen it. I don't know what's gonna happen, but I am excited. I hope they're able to really wrap that up in a meaningful way for those characters because the Guardians to me are such a big surprise out of the MCU because I remember at the time and I don't know if I talked about it on a podcast at that time, but I did not think without being connected to the MCU that the Guardians of the Galaxy would have been a very successful movie franchise. And I may or may have been right about that. But the, fairy dust that got sprinkled on it from joining the MCU has turned them into global megastars. It's one of the most successful franchises from the MCU. And I'm hoping that, Marvel over the, last couple years while they've experimented with phase 4 have also maybe learned a few things and we'll get, the first really, hopefully truly great MCU film since Avengers Endgame. But I personally, CP, I agree. I'm looking forward to The Flash. I think you wouldn't know this from like 2 episodes ago, but because I was not a fan of all those DC movies on the classic comic book list, but I do actually enjoy those movies. Like I like Justice League. I just don't think it's going to be a classic like Avengers was. But that doesn't mean I don't like it. I really enjoyed Man of Steel and CP. We're going to have to do there's got to be an episode where you and I just dive into the Snyderverse because I have a lot of respect actually for what Zack Snyder was doing with the world he was building. Once I could see the bigger picture, it's pretty incredible. Now, I don't know if they're solely building on the Snyderverse here so much as kind of crafting some new sort of adventure, but with the Flash, it definitely looks fun. And that's the thing that stands out to me. Obviously, I think I mentioned a week or two ago that, it has very kind of like Spider-Man No Way Home and
Yeah.
Days of Future Past vibes where they're taking characters from different timelines and mixing them all together. So it's not innovative per se in that manner, but it does look fun. I mean, Michael Keaton as Batman is obviously the highlight. Even the theme music coming back looks
Yeah.
really cool. So,
Yeah.
and I'm just excited to get back to the movies, man.
Yeah, me too.
So even Indiana Jones,
Ugh.
I've heard that Spielberg has seen it and he's quoted, or I'm paraphrasing here, but as saying that I thought I was the only one who could make these movies, and what an ego on that guy. But the thing is, I don't know. I love Indiana Jones, and I'm hoping that they can knock this one out of the park.
I just think that's so weird because also, I mean, have you like Spielberg doesn't really talk bad about people in the industry publicly.
Mm-mm.
He's like a very supportive filmmaker.
Yeah.
And so, no offense to Spielberg, but I don't know if we can trust him on that one.
Well, I'm hopeful. I'll hold out. I'll reserve hope until I see it. I will say Spielberg directed the fourth one and wasn't a huge fan. It didn't have a lot of rewatch quality for me, the same way that something like Raiders of the Lost Ark, really the original trilogy does. I think all
Yeah.
three of them have a great rewatchable quality. Even Temple of Doom, which is, it's still weird that there's that raft sequence where they like fall out of a plane and it's very dark and there's all this edgy stuff, but I can't help but rewatch it and just be into it. Like it's a really cool movie.
Yeah. No, I
Kind of
agree.
creepy. So, and then
Yeah.
there's Fast 10 CP, which you're a Fast fan.
Oh my gosh. It's hard to believe. Isn't it? I guess I just have two things when I see this. First of all, why did they not call this movie FX? I think that would have been an awesome name for a movie.
Oh yeah,
I mean, why is it Fast 10?
I don't know. Fast X.
Fast X. The point is, that's weird, but how unbelievable. Like, let's not really, like, how do I want to say this? Back when in like 2001, when we saw the first Fast and Furious movie, 2000, did anyone actually think we were going to be able to get 9 sequels to that?
Oh no, never.
It's like maybe a sequel,
I
if
remember
even
reading
that.
I remember reading something one time that like essentially they unlocked like two key things to build a franchise, and that is building an immaculate cast that's just larger than life, and you can't help but like want to go see them in an action movie. And
Mhm.
then two, they changed the formula and adapted it to international markets, and apparently that is the success that was derived from Tokyo Drift,
Mhm.
was that they found out that these movies played well overseas.
Mhm.
And when you incorporate a diverse cast and you give them global scale, it ends up that you have a very, very successful
I
franchise. That
mean,
franchise has made a lot of money.
whether you like the movies or not, they're successful and they're incredibly successful. So,
Yeah. And then lastly, I know you're a fan of the original, and it's probably only gone downhill from there, but there's also a new Transformers movie coming out. Thoughts?
dude, I think it looks really good. I know we talked about it a couple weeks back. The more I see about it, the more curious I am. First of all, the Beast Wars storyline is amazing. And I don't know if you saw it, but I really, really liked the Bumblebee movie. I think they finally, in that movie, got back to what do Transformers fans really want in a Transformers movie. And if they replicate that model of success in this, I think it's going to be a hit.
Awesome. All right. Well, CP, that actually does it for our episode this week. So had to get a little movie talk in there, but more than anything, like I said, I want to hear from our listeners your thoughts on previous writer strike. Let us know if you're being affected at all in any way, and what's going on in your world, as well as let us know what movies for the summer you're looking forward to, because we're kicking off CP blockbuster season, baby.
Yes, the best
Time to
season.
Yeah, it's time to go to the movies. So, once it gets hot out here, go enjoy that fresh AC and popcorn and have fun at the movies. It's, one of my favorite times of year, except there's no Star Wars movie, which hurts. So
Sorry.
that's why they should just re-release. Just if you don't have a movie that year, just put original Star Wars back in. If they put Revenge of the Sith, I don't care. They could put any of them. I'd go. They're just so good. So you're losing money, Disney, but you can do it. I know you can. So anyway, thank you everybody for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Be sure to leave us a 5-star review and a comment, constructive criticism, or if you guys love us, share that, because we love to hear it. And you can follow the show at filmmakerscompass.com, where we have a feed of all of our previous episodes, as well as the links to all of our social media, which you can find at Film Comp Podcast. You can follow me personally at Big Kid Dman and CP.
You can follow me at NDCal5. Thank you for hanging out and checking out this week's episode of Filmmakers Compass Podcast. In the meantime, we'll see you back here next week, and keep watching movies, hopefully in the theater.